Good morning, Center for Spiritual Living, Palm Desert, and friends all over the world. Grateful to be with you, along with my buddy, Jeffon Seely. We're back together. I know I said last week that Dr. Joe would be back. He is back. He's off of his sabbatical. But we concluded that it would be prudent for us to finish this project we've been working on for the last, well, this is week 15. But wait, even though we've been doing this quite a bit longer than that, to finish our project with the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. So it's me and Jeffon for 4 more weeks. Include, well, would it be 4 or 3?
I think it's 4.
4, yeah. 15,
yeah.
16, 17, 18. There we go. 18, like the amount of holes on a golf course. We're on the 15th hole, ladies and gentlemen. It's been quite a walk, hasn't it? So enticing stuff this week, sexuality, as we're in chapter 15. So grateful to have you with us. Grateful to have another 4 weeks with you, Jeffon.
Thank you.
Before the big dog, the big boss jumps back in. Who knows? Maybe he'll just he'll save for us to keep going. Not likely, but anyway, we're gonna keep going with our book study here and finish it up. Wherever you're joining us through our CSL Palm Desert website, YouTube. How else would folks be on Facebook? Whatever platform you're on, we're grateful that you're here. Jeffon, how are you this week? What's going on, my friend?
Things are really good. Yeah, have a few. You know, it's fascinating. There are organizations that are still continuing this conversation of diversity and inclusion. So having the opportunity to do some work this week and next week, which I'm really looking forward to. A little teaser here is, this is a Science of Mind or Spiritual Science of Mind magazine for November. And I had the wonderful privilege and opportunity to write the daily guides, which I am very excited to share and talk about an incredible process and in practice to be able to share something. And I'm so grateful for CSL and the community here at Science of Mind. And I mean, it's been such a beneficial thing for my life. As I've relayed to you and Dr. Joe, how grateful I am to be able to be a part of your community in this capacity, especially while I'm here in Southern California. So things are good.
Things are good. Love it. Congratulations. That's no small feat. I mean, you had to write 30 different essays, essentially, right?
Yeah, I mean, 250 words, which is easy. 250 words, it's easy to get to 250, but making those 250 words meaningful is yeah, the opportunity.
Yeah.
The opportunity. Yes.
Cool. So that's the November issue?
That's the November issue. Yeah.
And is that already out in the centers?
Do
we know? Or
probably within the next week or so they should be sent out, but they sent a few to over here a little early. So
love it. Yeah. Check out Jeffon with the daily guides. That's congratulations, my friend. That's a beautiful thing. The daily guides. You're a hot commodity right now, aren't you?
Yeah. Whoa.
You're sizzling.
The community there at the magazine has been such a beautiful blessing from Dr. David Goldberg providing me with opportunities in the past, and then now Julie Maru and Holly Sharp, who are with the magazine, and they've allowed me and provided me with opportunities to write an article every couple months, and then the guides this upcoming month. And so just all these opportunities, and this is for everybody. When we continue to share our gifts and be willing to recognize the light that is within ourselves and be around individuals who are willing to also recognize that light while you simultaneously recognize the light within them, opportunities, doorways, pathways become available to all of us. That if we are confident and courageous enough to continue down, it just continues to blossom and unfold, and it's available for all of us in various capacities. And in my experience, it's been quite a blessing.
Right on. That's a beautiful message and good news for all of us. Stay in your heart, find your purpose, give your gift, and life opens up, huh?
And trust and know that the highest good is always working out for you.
Yes.
Even in the apparent absence of your greatest good from your personal standpoint or your human standpoint, the greatest good is always unfolding.
You know, I just amen. It's interesting. I just used the word. I said you're a hot commodity, and it was interesting. I remember watching a show with Bishop Carlton Pearson, Bishop Edward Donaldson. Who else was on that? Bishop Yvette Flunder. They were doing a panel, and they were talking about the commoditization. Someone help me with the word. But basically, commodifying Black people as as a commodity, as a thing to be leveraged, right? So it's interesting, just as we use words, and as I use that word, you know, and what I love, and I know we're going to dive in here, and you're going to lead us through this, Jeffon. But one of the things I took away from this chapter was his willingness, his fear of being confronted by these two gals.
Yes.
Who basically were the voice of this program that he, you know, the leaders, the voice leaders and thought leaders. But he knew he had to.
Right.
He knew he had to be confronted by them. And they weren't the monsters that he thought they were. They actually opened the world up to him.
Right.
And so it's interesting. I just I continue to reflect on the language that I use and how it, and I mean, disrespect, you know that.
Of
I mean,
course.
yeah, you know, but it's just interesting after having been exposed to that conversation that panel had, how it confronted me and how maybe I commoditize whatever I do in life rather than see it as a living thing, a being, how we can just continue to grow and expand and be confronted. And part of that walk is uncomfortable sometimes, but like you're saying, even in living in our gift and living in our joy and living in our good and trusting life, there's a discomfort about that because we have to be on the edge of ourselves. But it always opens up this world of substantive contribution, of beauty, of joy, of passion and purpose and those types of things. So yeah.
And it's interesting, and then we can jump into this, but can we individually be comfortable and at peace in the gestation period? And there are these things that will pop up. And for instance, speaking and whatnot, in my profession, there'll be opportunities where big contracts will come my way and that will pop up. But all of the things that led up to that, it requires a level of patience, a level of inner knowing, a level of like the seed continuing to do the work every day. And eventually it will burst through the soil. Eventually it will unfold towards the light. And as it is with us as humans, it's there are these moments, miraculous moments where things unfold in such incredible ways. But even the moments where it doesn't seem as if anything is happening, there are small miracles. I guess the size doesn't matter, but there are miracles taking place that are leading us towards these monumental moments that then we deem as, oh, that was a great manifestation or realization. When the truth is, every single moment has been a manifestation and a realization.
Yes.
And it's an accumulation of those things that then we deem, well, now it makes this mental mark in my mind where, yes, it's something that I did.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't know.
No, that's lovely. I appreciate it. It makes me think of a quote I was reminded of by one of my friends and mentors. It's by Werner Erhard, the founder of EST, the EST training.
Yeah.
Long time ago, I don't know, back in the 70s, 80s, whatever it was, 80s. He said something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing now. I said quote, but I'm going to paraphrase. Real power is moving forward in the face of no results. That you keep doing, you don't have immediate gratification, you don't have a result in the moment, but you trust and know that what the work that you're up to is right, righteous, and powerful. And at some point, results are yielded, but real conviction and real power is moving forward in the face of no results. And I think we work so much in the land of manifestation, demonstration,
Right.
that there's so much to be about. There's so much to be said for continuing, to your point, to trust who you are, your gift, your talent, your purpose, and keep moving forward in that direction. At some point, something's going to demonstrate. It might not be world changing, but we trust that we're on the right path because we trust our heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
You're the man. Should we dive in?
Yeah, let's do it. This is
But I want to
another.
just real quick, Jeffon.
Yes.
I want to remind people to find that comment section and help us along with our excuse me, with our dialogue and discourse today. We always love it when you as Jeffon says, chime in, ding ding, chime on in, and help us along with our dialogue today. Forgive me, Jeffon. Go for it.
No problem at all. All right, so I'm going to share this screen here and make sure that you can see that, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. So 2 concepts as we move through this chapter 15, sexuality. One that was really one that I can continuously work on, which I'll get to as we move through it.
Cool.
So as always, starting off with definitions. First and foremost, the one at the top. And Reverend Charles, for sake of this this chapter, Reverend Charles and I were talking. I typically don't use the word
Q word.
The Q word.
It's almost like the N word to me. I mean, you know, I like remember how many weeks ago did we did the chapter when the author
a few weeks
talked
back.
You know, so that's just never it's never been a word that I've been comfortable with. So however you want to lead this dialogue, though, Jeffon, you know, let's yeah.
Okay. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
So we'll just we can read that there. Racism, a powerful collection of racist policies that lead to inequity between race sexualities and are substantiated by racist ideas about race sexualities. Anti-racism, then, a powerful collection of anti-racist policies that lead to equity between race sexualities and are substantiated by anti-racist ideas about race sexualities. As always, a lot of words that then become real or experiential in nature as we move through the conversation. So you may see that I did something a little different this time. You don't see all the words. I'm going to lead us. Yeah, I use the animation portion of PowerPoint.
Keep us on the edge of our seats.
Clever tricks. Lean in, everybody. Lean in. All right. So what are race sexualities? As he said on page, let's see, this is page 193. A race is like Latinx or Black. A sexuality is heterosexual or homosexual or bisexual. And so when you merge these together, you get a race sexuality. The racism then that he's talking about, which I'll say at this moment, queer racism produces inequities between race sexualities. There is a statistic on page 193 where he said, queer racism produces a situation where 32% of children being raised by Black male same-sex couples live in poverty compared to 14% of children being raised by white male same-sex couples, 13% of children being raised by Black heterosexuals, and 7% being raised by white heterosexuals. So what he's really bringing to the forefront in the early chapter here is the statistics that we've been talking about, those inequities, particularly as they relate to the kind of racism that we're discussing in this chapter. Again, he leads us to a conclusion that homophobia cannot be separated from racism, something that's something that's important to, I know in my unfoldment, to continue to recognize and to share with people. I know that Dr. Joe, when him and I sat down a few months back, and he was saying, well, do you also speak up in the sense of people who may be homophobic, friends who may be all different colors? Do you stand up?
He was asking you this?
He was asking me the question. And I said, yes, but I do know that there are areas where I can be more outspoken in the same vein that when we're in a predominantly, let's just say, Caucasian environment and somebody says a racist joke, the same way that we can stand up there. And so I know that that's an area that I can continue to work on as well. He goes into a little bit of a history lesson with this British physician.
So this is so interesting. This page 194 was fascinating.
It really was. It really was. And this guy, Havelock Ellis, a British physician back in the late 1800s, basically, you know, he put together a book and said that, as was the case with a lot of people at that time, that homosexuality is a physiological abnormality. And he also was in the alignment that crime was perpetuated more by people of color because it's something that you are born with.
It's something. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, it's just so interesting the ways in which we continue, the ways in which inequity was put up there, and inequality, and the facts that people would then gravitate towards to continue to maintain that belief.
And the evolution of thought too.
And the evolution of thought.
If imagine today if an essay came out that reflected those ideas on Facebook or what, I mean, I guess you'd have probably some people that'd be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But more and more people are like, what is that? I mean, and then just getting into I don't know if how much you're gonna get into this, but under the conversation of the size of a woman's clitoris and what that has to do with anything is just fascinating.
Yes. Yep. Which then they said,
if you've read this already, you know. If you haven't read it and what I just said comes out of nowhere, then I invite you to read the chapter. But
yeah,
anyway,
please.
We're gonna unpack it. Yeah, I'm not with Ozzy Osbourne going off the rails on a crazy train right now.
Yeah. And it's interesting the way in which they deem that then hypersexual activity. And obviously it's different from white women to black women, and therefore the way that they base that led then to their conclusion that women are hypersexual because of this physical feature that is predominant in African women. You know.
Yep.
But there is after that conversation there is a point on page 194 where he said racist ideas suggesting black people are more hypersexual than white people, and homophobic ideas suggesting queer people are more hypersexual than heterosexuals intersect to produce the type of racism of the most hypersexual race sexuality, and in this particular chapter, the black queer.
Right.
And he then was talking about his realization of when his whole idea or concept around black men who are gay, and this idea as a black man that then it aligned with hypersexuality, recklessness, and then also led to this masculinity and femininity, and the ways that women and men traditionally act are not then tied to their biology. Something, Rev Charles, that my friends and I, particularly those who are a little bit more stuck in or rigid in their views, have a very difficult time embracing. And
what do you have a difficult time embracing? Say it again.
Not myself specifically, but some of my friends who I've had conversations with, that idea that men and women are not tied to their biology.
Oh, yeah.
And in conversations with people and expanding that idea from cisgender to non-gender conforming individuals, it can be difficult to try to have somebody wrap their mind around that who may be very rigid in nature. And then I liken that to a concept when it could be around race too. It's the exact same type of philosophy where it's a very rigid viewpoint that's unwilling to step beyond the confines of this comfort zone to explore something that is foreign or unknown to them.
Well, Jeffon, do you find that with almost anything? It seems like, whether it's, I've been thinking so much about this. My daughter and I are driving down the street and a song comes on. Oh, Daddy, I don't like that song. And I like the song. But you don't? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, she doesn't like the song. I like the song. and I'm not trying to deflect or get out of the hot topics here, you know, of race and sexuality and all that. I'm just saying, okay, she doesn't like it and I like it. But how many times do we, when I'm hanging out with my friends or with people or, you know, like, man, that steak was awesome. What? You like that steak? That steak tasted like,
right.
Okay, right. They liked the steak. I didn't like the steak. That's it. Like, what is this knee-jerk thing almost to kind of make people conform? But it goes back to this a little bit, you know, our comfort zone, protecting our worldview. And I just think he keeps underscoring that here. And and nothing. That's all.
I'm with you there. And it takes real work to recognize those areas within ourselves that we can expand and grow and heal and move more into principle of understanding the concept of divinity and oneness. And then it takes courage to be willing to have these conversations with people who you love or trust or respect, family, friends, people close to you, that then encourage them to step outside of those. But it's almost to the degree that you're willing to step beyond that is the degree then to which you can help lead people through that same process. Whether they go down that process or not is to be determined.
And the author of the book, he still had to be willing to be influenced by what are their names?
I think Layla and maybe Yaba or
What are the two gals? The two gals. He still had to be willing to be as scared as he was, and that's one of the. To your point, Jeffon, he was scared of being confronted by them, of being lifted up by Jesus. Of being lifted up by I know. But he had to be willing to, and he was, and that is being willing to step out. You know, he, over and over again, what he talks about though is, do I want to be grown? Do I want to be raised? And over and over again, he exhibited that he has been, and I think that's our walk too. That has to be our walk.
Yeah,
is being willing to be brought up for all of us.
Yeah, and his realization when one of his best friends, he found out that he was bisexual.
Yep.
Or
he was gay.
That he was gay.
Wakia, right? What was this?
Yep. Wakia, I believe.
Wakia. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but yeah. Yep.
And that's, that was something that in my life, there were a few people that I knew when I was younger. One of my best friend's uncles and my best friend's older brother. And that was my whole relationship with the LGBTQ community at that time. And it wasn't until really I started in Seattle and met a handful of people, but then in Atlanta at the Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. And that was the first time, aside from when I was younger, that I really authentically engaged in a human-to-human relationship with somebody who walked a different path down that than me, who had who was LGBTQ or whatever the case may be. And in that authentic relationship, suddenly I invalidated certain thoughts that I was refusing to release or acknowledge within myself. And this, I hope everybody sees that what we've been talking about, whether it's racism, whether it's sexism, whether it's a homophobia, it is a process that is for us individually to continuously walk through and process and be willing to lean into our own discomfort in the hopes that we can discover not only more peace, but more connection, commonality, and oneness that we share with the people who we are on this planet with.
Yes, yes. And I think we also know, Jeffon, that if one of the indicators for me that I have more healing to do is when I project something, when I project it onto the world, when I make it real out here, it's a, literally a projection of what's happening in here. So we have to continue to be mindful of what's happening inside of us. And I'm grateful we keep having these conversations because it keeps it on the forefront for me, and I think it keeps it on the forefront for the folks that are tuning in as well. So it's good.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, what else you got, number?
All right, so moving on to the next here. So what he was saying then in this realization with his friend and with these two young women that he was at temple with, I think Kayla and Yaba were their names. He then recognized that this is a lifelong striving or process against homophobia of his upbringing and a lifelong striving to be queer anti-racist. And this is something that goes back to what we just talked about. It is not, okay, I read a book. Wow, I have it all figured out. I don't even have to revisit that thought. But it's a continuous process, time and time again. So what is he saying then? Anti-racism from this standpoint is equating that all race sexualities, ultimately striving to eliminate the inequities between the race sexualities. We cannot be anti-racist if we are homophobic and transphobic. That is a concept that I bolded for a reason, because that is something that I need to process in my mind and be willing to emphasize when I am having these difficult conversations with friends or family or people who have a difficult time accepting this equality that all of us as humans share. So I bolded that because I think that is a very important point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it speaks to the intersection that he talks about of, well, just this whole idea of race sexualities and where they intersect. And so you can't be anti-racist if we're homophobic or transphobic. So we have to keep working on all of it, just to underscore what you're saying. Love it.
Right.
Yep.
And this was something that really brought a tear to my.
Yep.
This is a tear to my eye, but it literally did. The average U.S. life expectancy of a transgender woman of color is 35 years.
Yep.
I mean, just sit with that for a moment. 35 years. And that is what we are getting at. The inequities that exist because of race, sexuality. And why is that the case? I know that there were some videos recently that surfaced of transgender women of color in LA who were being chased and beaten up. Video was caught on video. And I don't even know if anything happened to the people who did that. I see the ways that people are treated because of that. Driving through sometimes in San Bernardino or when I lived in Atlanta, and seeing transgender women of color and the way that they are treated in communities, it's heartbreaking. And what is causing that? Like, why do we have such a hard time accepting people for who they are? So much so that it seems to then threaten the individual, so they lash out in a violent, conflicting, harmful, hateful way.
Sleep, how we've been reared. What was the statistic is troubling. How he colored it is even he said, imagine what it's like for that person just to try and live a free life. Just to be free to move, to be free to express, to be free to be themselves. And yeah, all those questions you just asked, those are the questions we need to be examining. Because everybody deserves to have a free life. 35 years. And they're probably not dying of young age, right? Like you said, they're dying because of hate and of lack of understanding. I mean,
and of lack of policies that actually see them as a human being.
And for there to be repercussions for folks that don't respect that expression of life, that aspect of life. Policy. Yep.
Yeah, This is a really, that's why I've said before and I'll say again, I appreciate your willingness and CSL Palm Desert and everybody who's been chiming in to continue through this work. It is much easier to read one book, put it to the side and say we've already touched on that, or to look at the current now themes of America. We're moving through this political season. George Floyd was months ago. Look, we're not talking about that anymore. But to continue to have this conversation, to recognize that we've just literally touched the surface,
Yep.
and there is such a deep well that we as individuals and collectively can go into to begin to recognize how we can create a world that works for all by identifying the ways in which we participate consciously or unconsciously in a world that does not work for all.
So what do we say to folks? What do you say to folks that might be take a little time out, commercial break, that might be getting tired of the conversation? They're not, we're how many weeks have we been doing this now, Jeffon?
Yeah, this is chapter what, 16, 15?
Yeah, but we've been having the conversation since May. This is middle of October, almost toward the end of October. How do we keep people on board? If you're getting tired of the conversation, how do we keep people on board? How do we keep people rocking and rolling?
That's a really great question. I think kind of two folds. First, if we think about practitioner classes, if we think about becoming a reverend or a minister, it requires us to remain diligent in our studying in order to obtain this level of knowledge and intellectual knowledge and wisdom that then we can apply to our lives. So first and foremost, it requires attention and detail and a willingness to build this intellectual understanding so that we can apply these principles, these concepts in a way that is anti-racist, that is creating this culture of equality that we're aiming to achieve from, I think, all metaphysical individuals and New Thought practitioners stand behind that claim. Second, we've spent the majority of our life ignoring these things.
Yes.
And when I say we, I'm not saying like you, but
I get it.
We've spent the majority of our life ignoring these things.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for us to think that a week or 2 weeks or a month or half a year is enough time when we've spent decades ignoring this or just not bringing it into our awareness, that's a sign that it requires some attention and a willingness to go into. And it's uncomfortable because it's foreign, it's unknown, it's something that we don't often participate in. But I would dare to say that in all spiritual communities, this should be something that is just as important as talking about the concepts of science of mind, because this is the thing that will lead towards the oneness that we declare in the world by way of transforming how we show up in the world. And if we do not have that understanding, then we're shooting blanks from my perspective. And so I think that it's something that really should be incorporated within all spiritual communities, within all educational settings. And it should be an open conversation that we collectively as a human race, a species, continue to go through.
Yep. We've got I'd say catching up, and I'd say we're where we're supposed to be if we believe everything's on purpose, and yet we're talking about the dignity and the survival of human beings. So we do have some catching up to do. I mean, we're going to get there. So, talking about it for half a year it's half a year.
And it's 1 hour a week.
The generations and lifetimes of suffering that have happened, right? Yeah.
And think, once a week for an hour, we have 168 hours in a week. So you're spending literally less than 1%. What's that? 0.5% of your waking time roughly going through this concept. And that's overbearing, or overwhelming. I think that we should lean in a little bit more and then find our ways that we can incorporate spiritual principle around these philosophies or around these concepts of being anti-racist, of exploring fragility, of exploring privilege, Eurocentrism, ethnocentrism, xenophobia, and move forward, because it not only benefits ourselves, but everybody that we are around, come in contact with, and the future generations to come. And I would dare to say that it transforms the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. I agree with you. Did I tell you when I was in Cape Coast in Ghana in West Africa, I actually went into I went on a tourist kind of, well, not a tourist. I went around the country with a guy. It was just me and the guy, just to get to know Ghana a little bit better. And one of the first stops we made was in Cape Coast, is in the slave fortress. And I just didn't feel right going there as a tourist. It's like, oh, let me take pictures and check this out. I went right into the middle of one of the chambers, and I just sat down and I prayed. And I knew in my prayer in that moment, I didn't know how it made sense, Jeffon, or anything, but I prayed for my future. And this was 20 years ago. I prayed for my future going forward, but I also prayed for my ancestors. Mm-hmm. The ignorant within us, the aspects of us that thought that this is okay.
Right.
So I don't know how that works, but intuitively, just to what your point, I prayed backward too.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fascinating concept to think that time doesn't necessarily move in this linear fashion, but we can jump periodically, consciously, to various moments and periods, and internally begin to bring healing, transformation, empowerment, love into those particular segments of time by way of transforming our own consciousness. I mean, that is a profound concept, and that is metaphysics. There, you can pop in between these realities, so it's not in this fashion. It's literally, you can transform, and it's a phenomenal concept that now science is catching up to and proving that it is possible.
Amen. All right, my brother, what else do we have?
So now we're moving into what he's actually referring to. There are a few points that are extremely important that I'm going to touch upon as we move through. And Rev Charles, if anything comes up for you, please stop me.
So I'll just be quiet for a little bit, since we've got about 20 minutes left. So I'm just going to let you go through your
20 minutes flies. 20 minutes flies. And everybody who is chiming in, if you have questions, insights, thoughts that you would like to share, please be willing to do so.
Yep.
So to be queer anti-racist is to understand, this is from his perspective, understand the privileges of cisgender, of my masculinity, of my heterosexuality, of their intersections. This is something that I'm going to encourage all of my male friends or cisgender friends to begin to recognize when they have this type of difficulty embracing this concept of equality.
Jeffon, did we define cisgender, just so everybody knows if they haven't read the book?
Yeah, so cisgender is you basically identify with the sex that you had at birth.
Yep.
So you identify with that.
Thank you.
And obviously if so.
Yep.
And that is so privileges. For myself, a cisgender man, I can be aware of those privileges that I'm afforded in comparison to transgender women of color. Of my masculinity, I can be aware of that compared to somebody I know, my younger cousin, who is gay, and the ways in which he is treated different than I am because of my heterosexuality and these intersections. And I can be mindful and attentive and aware of the privileges that affords me. And that's what it means to be moving towards the next concept then, which is becoming an ally to these individuals, to transgender people, to intersex people, to women, and the gender nonconforming. To be queer anti-racist is to see that policies protecting Black transgender women are as critically important as policies protecting the political ascendancy of queer white males. That right there, I think that there was a movie called Milk about, and that's what popped up into my mind immediately. Imagine if the policies were also affording Black transgender women those same, they're just as valid as and important.
Yep.
And then there's two more here. To see the new wave of both religious freedom laws and voter ID laws as taking away the rights of queer people, and see homophobia, racism, and this concept of queer racism, not the person or the space as the problem, as abnormal or as unnatural. So being willing to truly identify homophobia and racism in these particular spaces and towards these particular people. And if we can embody that, which I admit that takes some work, that takes some time, that takes a level of introspection and understanding in my own life, to be able to stand up and declare that I am being anti-racist that fits this capacity.
Mm-hmm. I like how you laid that out as well, and how the author does as well, that it starts with self-understanding. Once we understand ourselves, we can begin to have compassion and see things differently, open our minds, align more with principle, come out of a lack of self-awareness always lends to just ignorant viewpoints.
Right.
We have to understand ourselves, be willing to grow, commit to change, and then start to see things differently. Would you pull those slides back up? Was that you, Jeffon, or is that Lori?
Yep.
There we go. What was the religious freedom, voter ID, homophobia, not that as a queer person, not that this problem is abnormal.
Yeah, so
rewrite the ink. This is what Dr. Will Coleman always says. We got to rewrite the ink. We have to ink new laws.
So what is abnormal and unnatural is embracing homophobia and racism. That is abnormal and unnatural.
That's right.
Not somebody's way of being, not the way that they were born, not the beliefs that they move forward with. That is not abnormal or unnatural.
And what right is it of ours to put that on somebody else anyway?
Exactly.
Where does that come from?
Exactly.
Privilege, this idea of privilege.
Mm-hmm. A concept of superior, inferior.
And whatever the superior race or sexual orientation are the individuals that create the law, that create the way things are, that create the paradigm, right? So, yeah.
Yep. From a patriarchal standpoint as well.
And he gets into that too.
Yep. So that whole concept there, though, all of those points are things that I know at the end when I say some takeaways, sit with the most challenging aspect of this chapter or how can you apply it. These 5 points are something that I would dare to say many of us can embrace and carry with us as we go through the weeks ahead.
Yes.
I know it's true for me. So
yes. You know, another question too, Jeffon, that I have to ask myself is, what am I afraid of? If I'm in the presence of a transgender person, what am I afraid of? Like what's the need to depress? What's the need to squash? What is my need to make them less? What am I afraid of?
Yeah, what is causing the discomfort? In the same way that somebody, if they find themselves in a group of Latinx people or Black people or white people, and they feel completely uncomfortable, what is the reason for that? Can we do some type of introspection in our own time?
Peel it away.
To pinpoint what is causing that discomfort. And I dare to say, it is not about what they are or the people out there are doing. It's some unresolved thing that is dwelling within ourselves that needs attention, healing, and compassion, for lack of a better word.
Yep. Whenever I'm othering, it's my fear, it's my concern. Again, we go back to the idea of projection. I'm projecting something, some fear that I've got here that I've got to heal, which is a great feedback system. If we want to become more loving, if we want to become a larger expression of life.
Right.
Yep.
So as he goes into this,
I said I'd be quiet. I can't help it, I guess.
No, it's important. It's important. So as Rev Charles said, he had these 2 women who were very they led him along this process of introspection and learning and identifying these areas that he could grow. And what he said is he learned from them that if that I am not a defender of Black people if I am not sharply defending Black women, if I am not sharply defending queer Blacks. So he had to then attack his own gender racism and also queer racism. And he wanted to overcome his gender racism and his queer racism. I had to be willing to do for Black women and queer Blacks what I had been doing for Black men and Black heterosexuals, which meant first of all learning more and defending them like my heroes had. And the heroes he's referring to are those two women. So that last paragraph there on page 199, that is something that many of us can embrace. And it doesn't just have to be towards gender racism, or as in this particular chapter, queer racism. It could be around just racism in general. Confront that within yourself and be willing to do for those who you other as you do for those who you dare to say or think are your tribe or your people.
Yes.
And finding ways to defend them in an equal type capacity that then invalidates or begins to break apart or dissolve those inequities that are apparent in the lives of so many. So I like that he kind of went through this process, turned the mirror inwards, and began to do this own introspective process of recognizing his shortcomings, so to say, and where he could grow.
Well, I've appreciated about the entire book, actually, about the entire book, is that he does that. And I think that actually it garners a greater authority. It's not just, hey, go do this. It's like this, I've walked through it.
Right.
I am walking through it.
Right.
So I know the experience of it. I'm humble enough and a human enough to say, which is, I hope, is what we're doing as well. You know, is how many times I just, you know, in self-disclosure, how many times have I screwed up? How many times have I, you know, been an idiot with somebody else based on just the beliefs that I grew up with, but have been willing to constantly stretch and grow and change. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's everything right about that.
Right.
Everybody's got a past. Everybody makes mistakes and does silly things. Can we keep growing? And I just appreciate his self-deprecation, his willingness to just lay it out there.
Yeah.
Which does lend to, look, I'm only it's like the best minister is one who's been a liar, been a thief, been all of these things, because you know you've walked through it and you've healed from it. You can relate to it. The one that's been the prodigal son, not just the one who's never faced adversity or had to overcome some great challenge. What do you know about the challenges of life if we haven't walked through it?
Right.
Yep.
Right. So true. So true. So I have let's see, two more chapters. Yeah, I got two more chapters to go through.
Two more chapters.
I have two more slides. So he goes on to say, it's best to challenge ourselves by dragging ourselves before people who intimidate us with their brilliance and constructive criticism. And that is something that I know that I found when I walked into CSL, being around individuals who provide me an opportunity to recognize more of who and what I am, and also be open and receptive to them guiding me in a constructive way that allows me to recognize areas that I could grow and develop and areas that I do well. That has been a powerful, powerful process. So I really like that saying that he kind of highlights from his two heroes, as he puts it.
Yep.
And then Yep. And then he's highlighting that they just continue to say that there's these fundamental problems. And it brings it back to this idea of policies and ideas that continue to perpetuate inequity by way of all of these differences that we have as human beings, and putting some on a pedestal and some not on a pedestal. And this hierarchy that is developed through history and through time that we still participate in today. So getting at the root or the heart of the problem by way of resolving it within ourselves, and then taking it forward to shift those policies and ideas that have been continuously perpetuating this inequity and inequality that we've been discussing over these these weeks. And with that, there are a few takeaways, but before I go to that, anything you want to share, Rev Charles, before I jump into that final slide?
It's 2 more slides. Wait for the next one.
Here we
Takeaways. Here we go.
Here we are. So, as always, I like to, well, I guess not as always, as it has been the last few weeks, I've been enjoying putting together a few things that I've been carrying with me and that I think that you may find value from as well. So first and foremost, be willing to see the divine shining through all the people you interact with or the individuals that you bring into your mind. So, as David Alt often told me, we are walking around committing thought crimes. We're not committing real crimes, but we are thinking thoughts in a way that are criminal in nature about a particular person or group of people. So how can we see the divine within people that we either interact with or think about? Are we thinking about them in a way that is reflecting or recognizing the divinity within them? A good practice during this political climate that we're in as well. Bring yourself back to the breath. We take 25,000 breaths on average each day. We can only breathe in the present moment. By bringing ourselves back to the breath, we bring ourselves back to this moment that we are in. And you can do that when you catch yourself acting or thinking in a way that fails to see the light in others. Bring yourself back to center. Bring yourself back to the recognition that you are in this moment of now, and then move forward in a way that honors that light within others.
Yes.
Meditate and reflect on the most challenging concepts from this chapter. If there's something that stands out to you, spend some time with it. Sit in the question, sit in the unknown, and be willing to dive into that and recognize why they strike chords in such a way within you, and how can you move towards true and lasting healing. This is the same one that I left in from last week, but I think it's important and valuable. Each night, ask yourself, what ways did I act anti-racist and what ways did I not? An honest introspection there. And then the final one, recognize that each moment is a blessing, a miracle in itself, and therefore bless each moment thought by thought. You can return the blessings that this life brings your way by way of blessing this experience thought by thought, choice by choice, action by action, emotion by emotion. So those are a few tangible things that I think that all of us could embrace and carry with us.
Love it. Love it. And breath by breath.
Breath by breath.
25,000 times a day, bless each moment.
And if you're awake for 24 hours straight, if it's only 16 hours that you're awake, then you're taking maybe 16, 17,000 breaths.
Well, we're still breathing. I mean, you got to breathe when you're sleeping. Do you don't breathe when you sleep?
I go into this weird hibernation state. No, I'm not conscious of my breath when I'm asleep.
Love it. Bless it in your dreams.
Bless it in your dreams.
As usual, magnificent stuff, Jeffon. Yeah, it's another great chapter. And I think I mentioned this to you, I don't know if it was before we came on air. Sometimes I feel like I'm reading the same chapter over and over again in this book, just in a different light. Like he highlights a different space or a different group or a different expression of life. Same principles, though. And I love that. But by the end of this, it's just treat people as an individual, not to group them, and we have a tendency to do that. Know yourself, honor yourself, be willing to grow, expand, and change. And I just really appreciate how he brings light to the different groups, different segments, different expressions of life throughout the whole process. It's great.
Yeah.
Right on.
Thank you so much. Another great week, and as always, it's enjoyable. I hope everybody out there has found some value in our time today and over the course of the last many weeks, and look forward to continuing.
That's right. Next Tuesday, chapter 16, which is on failure. That'll be a fun one to get into. And then 17 is success. So yeah, we just keep rocking and rolling. All right, that's my brother Jeffon Seely. I'm so grateful for our time together this morning. Hey, I want to let everybody know that our PayPal through our website, for some reason it's down. We're working on it behind the scenes. Our team's working on it. But in order to support our center at this particular moment, we encourage you to call into the center. What's the center's phone number? Let's let's go. I'm on my phone, so we want to get the centers. Hold just a second
Here, I have it here.
Do you? Okay, excellent. We want you to. This is a moment of a humble moment for me. I haven't memorized. It's
760.
What's
760-346-4649.
346-4649. Reverend Lori, can we get that up on the screen, please? 760-346-4649. Yeah, our online PayPal's down. I'm sure we're gonna have it up and ready to rock and roll here soon. But in order to support the center right now, which we love when you do that, and of course encourage you to right now, 760-346-4649. Operators are standing by. We appreciate your contribution. Jeffon, magnificent today. Tomorrow we've got the Sensational Six. Thursday, Tracy Brown is with Dr. Laura Shackelford on The Higher View. And then Friday is Life on Love with me. And then, of course, we've got another wonderful meditation on Sunday. And our meditation on Saturday. And then another wonderful Sunday service. And then into next week we go with another tremendous lineup. So it's a great day. Again, to contribute financially right now to support the center, 760-346-4649 while we work on getting our PayPal back up and going. Jeffon, have a great week, my brother.
Thank you, Rev Charles. I will talk with you soon. Thank you to everybody out there.
Everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for continuing to do the work. Have an extraordinary week and make it the best day ever. Peace and love.